everybody. I feel like I'm missing something today. I don't know. So how is everybody doing? We've got a good sized crowd today. You guys can hear me, right? Okay, good. See and hear you right off the bat. Thanks, Vince. He knows exactly what I'm gonna ask. So, okay, it is freezing in my studio, but I sit right under the heater, so I turned it off a little bit because it's kind of noisy. And I didn't bring my jacket today because it's pretending to be spring outside, and so I thought, if it's gonna look like spring, I'm gonna dress like it's spring, and I still need my jacket, so I should have my jacket today. All right, so hello everyone. I'm so glad that you're all here today, and we're gonna watch the tornado today, and we have quite a few people who, thank you, Zainab. She says she loves my hair. I'm trying to grow it out. I got the back cut, so I don't look like Harrison Ford on the back of my head anymore. But the rest of it, I decided to try and grow it out just a little bit. So we'll see. I do that all the time. I start growing it, and then, you know, after a month or so, I'm like, no, I can't do it anymore. Cut it all off, and then I go back down to super short. So that's probably, you know, what we'll end up doing. And you see the picture of the tornado, but not me. Just hit refresh, Marnie. If you can't hear me, hang on one sec, guys. Oh, Atra's got it. Thanks, Atra. So if you're new to viewing parties, I know we have a couple of people at least today who have never been to one, or at least have never caught one live before. So if you're new, basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna watch the tornado video, and you guys, I'm gonna ask you questions, you know, about what you did, and kind of trying to keep you all awake and lead the topic. And if you guys have questions about anything, if there's anything in particular you struggled with, stop me, ask a question, make sure your question is in all caps so that I can easily see it. And if I miss you somehow, feel free to ask your question again. Ask your questions, I will answer them. You guys know I'm good for a couple of rants. I am set up to do demonstrations. If you need a demonstration on anything that we do here, then let me know and we will do that. So, without further ado, doesn't that mean goodbye? Maybe I'm confusing my languages. That's always possible. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and go to our video. Oh yeah, and the tornado was actually suggested in our Patreon poll by both Barbara and Nisa. So this one is dedicated to them, and I know I suck. I'm sorry, you guys. I should have done a verbal shout out in the video, and I don't know what I was thinking that day, but anyway, I added a text one, so that's loud for me. Okay, let me know how the audio is of the video in relation to my voice. I want to make sure that you can hear me better than you can hear the video here.
Of my paintings. So I'm going to take my 1/2-inch flat brush, and yes, this is my 1/2-inch flat brush.
Okay, thank you, Amanda.
I was getting my brush.
They're spelled totally different words.
So I'm going to wet it in my jar. I'm just going to use a little bit of kind of watery black paint. I'm not worried about underbinding it because I'm going to paint over all of this. I just want to get a little bit of paint so that I can come back to here.
What the deal is with the quality of my video, I keep seeing little pixelations.
So
I swear I say it every week, and every week it gets worse and worse, but it's really about time for me to get a new computer.
Right there. See how watery and thin my paint is? Kind of generally in this area, and I can make adjustments to it even once I start filling it in. So none of this is set in stone.
So I saw a lot of really awesome versions of this painting. Some of you did it pretty similar to how I did it, and they looked great. And some of you went crazy and did some really cool things, like buildings and fences flying all over. I think I saw a cow. Did somebody in here, did you do a cow like flying through the air? I saw some really cool things, you guys.
And just just let it twist.
I know
in
that
a
there
way that feels the
were
most natural.
some people who had issues with the clouds,
twist in
and
any
so we
particular
will do
direction.
some demos on that.
I think that's
Remember
pretty
that
good.
when you tell me that you had a hard time with something, it helps me more if you're very specific. Tell me exactly what you had a hard time with, what happened.
Again, I'm just kind of saying where that
Because
is
that
going
gives
to
me
be.
a point to start with. If you just say I hate my clouds, that doesn't give me a lot to go on. So make sure that you're very specific when you tell me that you had an issue, so I know exactly what to focus on.
Kind of like the idea of a fence. Now, I know it might seem silly to kind of block all of that in, only to paint over it again. But for me,
Someone did a Model T
I
in
find
it. I missed that one.
As long as I've sketched it out, in my mind, it's kind of
And hello
burning
to
out. I know
everybody.
where all
I
my
said
different
hi to
elements are
everybody
gonna go.
in chat before we started
And
broadcasting,
so
but
it's
since
okay
we
that I
started,
paint
we
over it.
got a
If
few
I
more people
don't
in. So if I
sketch
didn't say
those
hi to
out
you already,
first, then
hello.
my brain still doesn't really know where it's going to put anything. So I'm going to go to my 1-inch flat brush now, and I'm going to wet it in my jar. And now I've got some burnt umber with my Mars Black and titanium white. And for my sky, and you can really use any
I
color.
think my
you don't
head
have to use,
shrinks sometimes.
burnt umber with the Mars
Sometimes
Black.
I have
You can
my
just pick two
headphones
colors that make a really
like
nice
on the
dark
smallest
color
setting,
that you
like
and
right
go with
now,
that. I
and they
kinda
feel
wanted
too big for me.
kind of a
And then
vintagey
sometimes I
looking
have to like open them up a little
sky,
bit
so that's why I picked the burnt
so
umber.
that they don't feel like they're
I almost
creeping
went
up
with
my
a
head.
blue mixture,
Today I
but
feel like my head is
I
really
liked the
tiny.
mood of the burnt umber the best.
Maybe it's just me.
So I'm just
Maybe I'm
gonna
the only
easily
one
mix
whose
it.
head
It
shrinks.
doesn't matter if it leans more toward black or brown. And every time I come back, I may pick up a different mixture. So I'm just going to put a tiny speck of white in there because I don't want it to be pure black, you know, just a little hint of a lighter
Man, you
color.
can't even tell that that's black and brown. I don't know.
I'm just going to start laying that dark color in.
I don't know.
This
Maybe
is
my lighting
all
was
the
off, but it looks
tornado
like just a
area
big pile of
that
black
I
on my
use.
palette
Even though my
there.
tornado is going to have some lighter bits in it, I want the base color
Tiny
to
head
be nice
syndrome.
and
Yeah.
dark. And I think that
You
ended up
guys
being a
are
little
so
closer on the
funny.
side of black
Make
and
me
brown,
giggle today.
and that's okay. The little bit of variation that you get. in
Good,
it,
Gwen. That
will
makes me happy to
really
hear.
get
Gwen
it
says that
in
she
your
tried to copy my
tornado
clouds, but finally
clouds
just
a
did
little
her
bit more
own thing on the
light
clouds and was
and
much happier
vibrant,
with them.
because it wouldn't
Good.
be all just
That's
one
exactly what I
solid
want. I know that sometimes you
even though you
guys
drew a line
get
there,
really wrapped up
don't
trying
draw
to
a
do
line here.
it
Don't come in and do
exactly the way
Just
I did
right
it,
over top
or
of it.
maybe you do do it
Nice,
exactly the way I did it, but they look different and you get frustrated with that. But you shouldn't. You really shouldn't.
Focus on getting.
You know,
all those
I'm
little
just kind of
specks
guiding
covered.
you. Wherever you end up is up to you. Your goal shouldn't be to make your painting look exactly like mine.
Don't worry
And
about
if
the
you have
tornado part
to
right now.
do your
We are
painting
gonna come back
in
and
a
put that
different
back in
way
later.
than what I demonstrate to
Let's
get
get
it
a
to
little
look
bit
the way
more
you want
white.
it to, there's nothing wrong with
And I'm gonna
that.
start right
I'm
below
certainly
where
not
that
offended
color
by
is
that, and
and work
you shouldn't
up
be upset
into it.
that you had to do it a different way to
Right
get a
back
result
down.
that you liked. That's just the way it is. That's the way painting
Back
works.
and forth, different directions. With this being a tornado, the
Kelly
sky
says,
is
I'm
very
ever
tiny,
amazed by
the
how
air is
far you can
moving
stretch one brush
all
load.
kinds of directions.
It's, you know, it comes with
that
practice.
anything caught up in
It has
in
to
the
do
air
with,
is moving in
you know,
all
how
kinds
much
of
water I have on my
directions.
brush,
So don't
how
feel
much
like you
paint
have
I
to
load
go
up, the way
side
I
to
load the
side.
paint on my brush. But also, yes, it does have to do with the brush itself. These
Heavy
canvases
pressure
that
like
I've been using the
Pull it
last
up
couple of
and down.
weeks are really
Light
helpful
pressures
with
in the
that
back
too.
of the
I
anymore.
really like these
To blend it
canvases.
in,
I
get
told you
rid
guys last
of
time, these are the
ends of
Blick
brush
Studio
marks.
canvases.
Quite a bit more. light. I'm
And
not picking
yeah,
up the black
I really
brown
like these
anymore.
canvases.
If you feel like you need a little extra,
They're
I'm gonna
really
put
about
that
the same
down.
price as the Michaels
Picking up
Value
a
Pack
new-
canvases
still
when they're
starting
not
with a
on
rosette
sale.
color.
But the
Right
quality
into
is way better. I like
See,
them
I'm
a
not being
lot
shy.
more.
I went almost up into the dark area with that. Light pressure to get rid of those hard brush marks.
Yeah, they're pre-gessoed. If it's white, it's pre-gessoed because canvas is kind of a tan color. So if you can't see the weave, if you can't, you know, look at the back of a canvas, that's what ungessoed canvas looks like. So if it's white like this, it's been
Almost done
coated
with our
in
sky.
some kind of a gesso, you know, surface prep
Light pressure.
thing at the factory.
And still just white.
Good,
so the
10,
line
and you're
is
doing
gonna be
awesome
even lighter.
work.
But
10
see, there's
says I
still
try to
that
learn your
darker
techniques
mixture.
and then do my
I put
own
a bit more
version.
pressure on my brush. I'm gonna get a much
And
darker
that's
color
perfect.
than what you're seeing right there. So just be aware of that with how much pressure you're putting on your brush. Not only will you deposit more paint, but
Welcome,
you'll
Audrey. I'm glad you made
deposit some
it.
of that darker color as well. See, I put just a little bit more pressure and it's darker. Which, you know, isn't bad if you decide, I want it darker right there. So I put a little bit more pressure there and I got some of that color. It's just all in what you want. Light pressure. All right. I feel like my sky is good. I'm going to come back into my black brown. I didn't clean it off. That white is still in there. I'm just going to darken up that color. And I'm going to put out a little ultramarine and a little cadmium yellow medium. And that
Eileen, there's never a reason to stop hoarding art
like
supplies.
Ultramarine
There's never a reason
because
for that.
it doesn't make a bright, vibrant green. It gives us a little bit more of a natural green. That and when it mixes with the burnt umber.
Baby asks,
really
have you put out a
grays it
video
out.
on
And I
YouTube
wanna
about
have
brush
green,
strokes?
but I
My
don't
mom
have
showed me the video on
green,
taking care of my
you know,
brushes, but I'm
vibrant.
struggling with
want
the
a dark
strokes.
green.
So it depends on
pull
what
some of
specifically
this
you're talking
ultramarine
about.
in
Because
there.
remember, there's a
I can
trillion
see
ways you
blue.
can do. Oh,
And then
hello,
a little
Sloan.
bit of yellow.
Sorry. There's a
going
trillion
for
ways you can do
Even a
things.
very obvious green right now, just a really dark kind of.
And so I guess it really depends on what specifically you're talking about. If
that's
you mean
probably good.
kind of like
It's
how
a
I'm
very,
doing the
very gray
background
color.
here,
Come back to here. I'm using
I
the
do have a
edge
couple of
my
videos
brush,
where we
see
go
that?
pretty deep into
Back and
that.
forth. Don't be afraid to overlap your
I'm trying to think of what it is. If anyone knows, I know there was a video where I got really specific right at the beginning while we were covering the background.
Solid horizon. If this is a really
I can't think of what it is,
day
but if
with
anyone
that
remembers,
weather,
let me know.
you know, all kinds of dust and grass and everything is going to be blowing around in the air, and we're probably not going to have a real solid horizon.
Notice how quiet it is on this part. I was gonna do some time lapse and then I decided, maybe that's a really loud truck. Very loud truck.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I cut out the
that's
audio
like
to time lapse it and I thought, well, maybe we'll try a video without time lapse today. So that's why that part's all quiet.
Very, very close to what we did in the top corner of the sky. And I'm going to start putting my actual tornado part back in. So we'll say it's kind of right here. And comes down about like that to there. That's okay that I'm picking up those other colors and it's blending in a little bit. Just fill it in loosely. Just kind of scrub that back and forth just to get rid of any lines.
Debbie
Not
said
worried
she
about
listened to
colors
some
mixing.
music from
It's not
Twister
really
when she
any
painted
lines
this.
because
That
lines
does
are
sound like
harder to
fun.
cover. Okay, now let's start really putting in our highlights and giving our tornado some dimension. So I'm going to get that same color, my black-brown mixture. And again, whenever I come back, I'll do it a little bit different. Sometimes it'll be more brown, sometimes more black. And I'm going to mix that color up with a little bit of white so that it's a bit lighter and I can start outlining where my highlights are going to be. So for the
Twisted
most
sister.
part here, I'm going to be using the tip of my brush and just kind of see, just little short kind of flicks. longer out here toward the
All right, so now we're starting on the clouds.
You
So
can even do kind of this bounce.
for you guys that had a hard time with the clouds, let me know in here specifically what it was that you were having an issue
I'm
with.
putting a little bit of pressure, so I kind of put pressure into it and bounce it up onto the tip. It's almost like a dash, like that. See how I go pressure up, pressure up, pressure up. But I'm doing it quick. But whatever you need to do, if that doesn't make sense to you, please don't do it. But either way, I'm doing smaller shapes here toward the tornado and longer, a little bit more flowing shapes out there.
Oh,
And I know this
let me
color's
move my
not
big old
showing
head.
real well just yet. Let's add a little bit more white. See if that's better.
There we go.
So see, short little brush strokes. And now I'm going to come in with super light pressure and kind of start dusting them away. Not on both sides. If you dust it away on both sides like that,
Yeah, Tan, that I think that is that's
cloud.
one for
So
sure.
I just kind of did that on the top. I may come down in places.
Sloane's clouds all became one color. Okay, that means that you're overworking the
Pull it
paint.
back here a bit.
So I'm gonna guess that you were
So
applying
edge of my
paint
brush,
quite
I'm gonna
heavily,
make a longer
and then while it was
See that?
still wet, going over it and over it and
Super light
over it
pressure. See, my
again.
brush isn't even
That's
bending.
exactly what will happen. You know,
Barely
you really
touching.
want to kind of work thin and work in small areas here. You know, once you get an area, a color in an area, don't try to, you know, mess with it and fix it. If there's something you don't like about it, you leave it alone, because you can come back and put another layer over it later. But the more you go over it and over it and over it, you're just going to blend them all together into a solid colored mass.
Really not much. So I just picked up a tiny speck of white on that side of my brush.
Okay, hang on one sec.
see.
Let's pause this. We have a couple of comments about the clouds. Katrina says, for me, I think it was the blending part and getting the pressure right and having them distinct. Yeah, Gwen says that she dries in between each layer. And I don't even necessarily worry about drying each layer completely. But so let's do a quick little demo on well, let's put me over here. Okay, let's do a quick little demo, and I'm going to show you the difference between applying the paint super thick and overworking it. If you're applying it really thick, you might also you're going to have harder lines when the paint is really thick. When the paint is thinner, it naturally kind of fuzzes out on its own, and that helps you a little bit. But don't get so hung up on trying to make the paint thin, because then you might make it too thin and then really struggle that way because you won't get coverage. There's, with everything, you guys, there's a little bit of practice that goes into it. And sometimes I think that we overthink things. If I say, oh, work with your paint thinner, somebody out there is gonna go and use the absolute minimum paint that they can and then struggle with coverage and get frustrated and just feel like they can't do it. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm getting out some paint here. I'm going to show you what it looks like when you use too much paint and not enough paint, and how to get the right amount of paint, okay? So, where is my brush? There it is. Okay, so I'm just going to wet my brush in my water here, and I want to make sure you can see it. So my brush is completely wet, but remember, we don't want to just start using that. There's way too much water in here. But also, when I say wipe your brush off on your jar, whenever I paint with people in person, I see them, they start doing this thing. Like getting off as much water as they can, or they'll even get a paper towel and start doing this thing. And I'm like, why did you get your brush wet then? So All right, wet your brush, wipe it once on the edge, maybe once on the other side. That's it. Okay, so I'm just gonna get a gray color. It doesn't matter. So some white and some black. So let's see, we wanna do, my brush is still actually quite wet. So I guess we'll do the too much paint first, okay? So there's too much water on my brush and I picked up a lot of paint. Can you see that? See how heavy my brush is with paint? How it's all kind of thick right in this area. So that's too much paint. So we're gonna come in here and try and make like our cloud shapes and then start trying to dust them out. So even though I'm using just the tip of my brush, see that? Just the tip of my brush, I'm applying a lot more paint up here than I really want, because all I really want to do is soften that line. But now I'm applying too much. And I know a lot of times people start seeing things like that and they're like, oh, well, I have to break that line up. I don't like that hard line. And so they keep going. And the more you keep going, the more frustrated you get. And before long, you're putting too much pressure on your brush and now it's just taking over the entire canvas. So then you decide, well, I don't want it that dark up here. I want it lighter. So I'm gonna get some white. And I picked up quite a bit of white there. And I'm gonna put it here. But now I have a hard line there, so I have to try and get rid of that. And before long, you just keep working it and it's all blended in one color. And it's a downward spiral from there because, okay, so let me tell you a story. So this actually reminds me a lot of exactly what we're talking about. It just kind of hit me that it does. So I absolutely hate potato salad. And I don't know, maybe I hate potato salad because of the story that I'm going to tell you. So one time when I was a little kid, you know, at my house when I was growing up, if you didn't eat what was put in front of you, that's what you got. I had friends whose parents would cook individual dinners. That wasn't in my house. And I had this potato salad sitting in front of me and it was gross. I don't know, maybe it wasn't gross. I thought it was gross. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe if I put some pepper on it, it will be better. So I put a bunch of pepper on it. And then it had too much pepper on it. So I thought, okay, well, maybe if I put some salt on it, then it will be better. And so I put a bunch of salt on it. And now the salt was way too much. And I was like, okay, it needs more pepper. And so I kept going back and forth until this poor potato salad was like gross with layers of salt, and I'm talking a lot of salt and pepper on it. And then, by then I couldn't eat it. It was like horrifying. So that's really what this reminds me of when people start doing things like this. You know, you start with a little problem. I don't like this cloud. That's the little problem. And then you add more to it. And then you add more to it. And each time you add more to it, it's to correct the last thing that you did. When in reality, we have to stop worrying about correcting. Correcting is where we get into a lot of trouble. By the way, now my brush is kind of dry and there's not a lot of paint on it. This is what it looks like when you don't have enough paint on your brush, okay? So I'm gonna show you, we've got our paint here. I'm just gonna pull some out. See how I kind of pull it back a little bit? I'm not like mushing and getting all those blobs of paint everywhere. So I'll pull a little bit out, kind of loosely mix them together, press my brush flat, which kind of sucks the paint up into the bristles, and drag it back so it's nice and smooth. And now, see, I don't have gobs of paint on here. So when you're doing clouds like this, or really anything, whenever I tell you guys, put it down and leave it alone, you can fix it later. I know that it's that whole later part that bugs people. You don't want to fix it later. You want to fix it right now. Well, I promise you that if you try and fix it right now, you're going to make it worse. So don't keep putting layers of salt and pepper on those mashed potatoes or potato salad. Just let it sit there. You can come fix it later. So now I'm going to start with those shapes again. And this is a painted over canvas, so it's not acting like a regular canvas. So I have my general shape in there. I've decided I like that color. Now I've applied most of that paint. See how light my pressure is? My brush is barely bending. And I'm just gonna come here and just lightly over the top of it, And because, like I said, I am painting on top of a painted over canvas, it's not really responding the way it would on a regular canvas. So it's just super light pressure. I'm just breaking up my line. I'm not gonna worry about anything else, okay? That does not look amazing. But instead of worrying about anything in here that I might not like, I'm gonna leave it alone. I'm not gonna touch it. I'll just go get me some more paint and I'll go work somewhere else. Work over here for a minute. You know, just do the same type of thing. And then maybe I'll come over here and work right there. All kinds of little sections. None of them are my final layer. Remember, you don't have to nail it on the first go. In fact, I think if you have a few layers, it gives a little bit more depth and interest to it. Let's see. It's dry to the touch. There's not really any paint coming off of my hand, so I'm gonna get a little bit of a lighter color now. Same thing, just kind of pull it out like that. See, I've got the color, but it's not blobbed on my brush. Now I can come in and make adjustments. So I can start laying it right here if I decided I wanted a lighter spot. Just pull that bottom edge out. And then I'm gonna leave it alone again. If there's something about that color I just applied, I'm not gonna try and mess with it again because I still could blend it out and end up with a big solid cloud like this. Okay, one last thing and then we'll move on for a minute because I've been ranting at you for a while. Let's say you do this. Let's say this is where your canvas is right now. I know that it's really easy to look at that and go, well, this one's done. I totally screwed this up. Let's bust out a brand new canvas and throw this one in the garbage. And that makes me crazy, guys. Stop throwing canvases. Why do you throw a canvas in the garbage? Paint over it. But anyway, if this is what you have, I mean, if you guys watched the video, you saw me paint my clouds twice. I decided I didn't like them. I just went right over top of it again. And there's no reason you can't. That might still be just a little bit too wet because I did apply that paint pretty thick and pretty wet. But if this is where you are right now, come back to it with a different attitude. Grab a color that's a little bit different somehow, whatever, darker, lighter, whatever you like, and do like what I said here. Work in small sections. Maybe start down here at the bottom with a light color. Then just lightly break up the line above it. And if you have to wipe a little bit of the paint off of your brush before you do that, you can't even see that. There we go. If you have to do that before you come back and start breaking up lines, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. And then, you know, leave that. It's okay if that light, maybe it looks terrible at this point. It doesn't matter. Don't try to fix it. Come back later. Keep adding layers. But the more you go over a spot while it's wet, the more you're just going to blend it in and end up with a solid color. So that's a really easy thing to correct right now, is just stop overworking things. Don't overwork them. Okay, let's go back and see if I stirred up any more questions because I ranted at you forever. Okay. Oh yeah, there was a lot. I even got a rant emoji. Oh my gosh, you guys are so full of good questions today. Okay, this is gonna take me just a minute. Yeah, Kelly said the way you hold your brush high up on the handle, I think I hold it too hard and too low. Absolutely, you guys, absolutely. I know that when we're new to painting, we wanna make sure we've got all of the control. And so we end up holding it like a pencil, like this, you know, and we get down in there and, you know, kind of micro focus what's going on here. But in doing so, we put too much pressure on the brush, which applies too much paint. It makes harder lines. It doesn't do exactly what it is you're going for. But what it also does is it makes us work slower. And so we get in there and we start trying to, you know, like draw a specific shape, but then that shape gets a little wobbly and so we try and fix it. And so I would recommend don't do that. The brush handle is this long for a reason. You know, hold it back like this. Get in there and And see how, it's not just that I'm holding it far back, but see how loosely I'm holding it? It's really, it's resting right here on my hand and over the top of this finger. And then my thumb is really just there so that I don't drop it. Because if I let go with my thumb, see, I'll drop it. So I'm not, you know, this. I'm not this. I'm not, you know, like this. It's a very loose, very light hold. And, you know, that feels like you're not going to have any control. But honestly, once I realized that and I started painting like that, I felt like I had much more control. I was much happier with what came off of the end of my brush. So try that. And good. Deb has been practicing not overworking things and is becoming more mindful about it. Good, good, good. Let's see how to load my brush properly. All right. Well, I kind of showed you guys, but yeah, we can go over that real quick. You guys like my potato salad? My potato salad story. Don't paint potato salad. I don't do anything with potato salad except throw it in the trash. Don't paint potato salad. Always such a tidy palette. No, I only have a tidy palette when I'm showing you guys. When I'm painting for myself, I'm a complete mess. Don't salt the paint. Oh boy, you guys, you make me giggle. Whoa, my chat just scrolled way up. Good, Sloan, I'm glad that helped. Yeah, the corner of your brush, Katrina says, I realized I was using the corner of my brush. So I use the corner of my brush a lot too, but you get a very different effect. So when you're trying to blend, you absolutely don't want to use the corner of your brush because you're either going to get a line or you're going to put more pressure on it to get the paint off, and that's not going to help you blend. Always use the flat part and very light, very, very light. What made me decide to use my flat brush instead of my cloud brush? When I was using my cloud brushes, I was getting really crazy and doing like monstrously intricate clouds like I like to do. And I've been trying to focus on paintings lately that are just a little bit more simple. So I didn't want to go down that road. Not right now. I mean, we will do some more intense cloud paintings, but that's not what I wanted for this painting. Yeah, so Debbie, you were there when I put the rubber band on my brush. I can't remember who it was. It was somebody at the retreat mentioned that if you put a rubber band on your brush back here, I don't have my brush with the rubber band on it here, and I don't have a rubber band here, but put a rubber band on your brush handle, and that will remind you that's where you want to hold your brush. So when I use my brush with the rubber band on it, I make sure that my fingers are right up against that rubber band. That's where I hold my brush. And so if you need to do that to remember to hold your brush farther back, you should absolutely do that. You just wrap a rubber band around it toward the back. And let's see, it was Regina. Okay, you know, I was thinking it might have been Regina who suggested that, but I couldn't remember for sure. Yeah, you guys absolutely put rubber bands on the ends of your brushes. I don't need a ton of a reminder on it, but every once in a while still I find myself kind of choking up on my brush and I'm like, no, let's go back here. So yeah, we could all do that. Okay, let's do a very quick loading because you guys are like, several people already commented about how amazing it is that I can take my paint so far on, you know, a single load of paint. Well, you guys can too, especially if you're using my brushes. Not that you can't do it with any other brush, but so my brushes, I had them made specifically with that in mind. So if you have my brushes, you know that the bristles are very fine. It looks stiffer because it's wet right now, but the individual hairs on these brushes are very, very fine and they're soft, but there's a ton of them. So they're packed together. They've got a lot of stiffness, but those fine bristles where they're packed together so tightly, they hold a ton of paint. They also hold a ton of water, so you have to be aware of that. Okay, so I am going to, let's see, my goal is to cover this canvas on, I think we can do it, 2 loads of paint. 2? Should we try that? All right. So again, I'm wet it in my jar, and I'm gonna wipe it once really good on that side, flip it over, and one more time. See that one drip of water that came out? That's it. If you start getting crazy with like trying to scrape all that water out, then you're taking too much moisture out. I'm just gonna put out a little bit more paint. Okay, so to load your brush for maximum coverage, I've painted with newer painters quite a bit. And so I know what a lot of people do. And I know that this is someone out there watching right now. And they come in and they go, and I've got this little tiny bit of paint, and they try and make it go as absolutely far as it's going to go. Stop doing that immediately. Don't be afraid of your paint. So I'm gonna come into the paint, see how I kind of, I'm not right in the middle of it, but I went into the paint. And now I kind of pull it back a little bit and mush. See how my bristles opened up like a fan? So when I lift my brush and those bristles come back together, they're gonna suck that paint up like a sponge. That's what you want. You want that paint on the inside of your brush. Just having it on the outside, that's not good enough. A big glob of paint on the outside is really not gonna go very far. So I might also take a big glob of paint, but I need to make sure that it's loaded up inside better first. So now my brush, it's got a good glob on the outside, but the inside of these bristles is packed. I'm gonna grab just a little bit more on the outside, so now I've got a little ball there on the outside as well. Another thing, I'm not gonna do it because then I'll have to reload my brush, but a couple other things I see newer painters do is they come in here and they just start scattering it everywhere. I have to cover the entire canvas all at once. And so it's just like this chaotic, and that is gonna take you a lifetime to cover that canvas. But another thing is they come over to it and they immediately just go and like smash that paintbrush down. And what that does is like squirt out the paint in that one area, and now you have to try and move all of the paint off of that area. So I'm not gonna do that either. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pick a part of the canvas where I'm comfortable starting. It doesn't matter where it is. I tend to usually start like kind of up in a corner, but that's just my preference. And my pressure on my brush is only about like that. Do you see that? My brush is bending, see? But it's not, I'm not squishing it flat. I'm really using what's on the tip of the brush. So this is load number 1. I'm just kind of filling in this corner first, and then we can go back and forth, but it's still just really that bottom half of my brush that's bending. I'm not putting full pressure on my brush. I'm gonna go, 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 until I'm having a hard time getting any more coverage. I'm still using the same pressure. Once I'm not really getting the coverage I need anymore, I can put a little extra pressure on my brush. That transfers some of the paint to the canvas, but it also transfers a little bit of the paint to the tip of my brush. Heavier pressure there. And then it just kind of, there was some good pressure there. And then it just kind of becomes second nature. Notice how all of my brush strokes are overlapping. I'm not moving on from a section until all of the white spots are covered in that section I'm working in, you know? So like right here, I'm gonna start kind of overlapping that. I put a good amount of pressure on there so that I could get some of that extra paint. And I'm taking it out until all of those spots are covered. A little more pressure there. All right, I think I need a little bit more paint. So I'm just gonna dunk just the very tip of my brush just right into the water. See, I didn't like and submerge it. I just kind of dunked the corner of my brush. And I'm gonna do the same thing. Pull some out, pull it out, squish my brush into it. And I can do it quick because I'm very practiced at it, but that's exactly what I'm doing. Pulling it out and smashing it, squishing it, sucking that paint up into the bristles. And let's finish the other half. Overlapping that area, still only using about half the pressure on my brush. Little extra pressure there. And also these little canvases here that I use for our demonstrations, they have such a tooth on them that even after this canvas has been painted over numerous times, and look, you can still see the canvas texture there. So this canvas is giving me a little bit of an issue covering it. If it were a nicer 5x7 with a little bit of a better texture, I'd be able to cover it much easier. But I'm having to fight with it a little bit. Okay, so there. I covered that 5x7 with a 1/2 inch brush in 2 loads of paint. So just remember, you gotta get enough paint, you guys. So many people are afraid to get enough paint. I don't know if it's that you feel like you're gonna waste it or what, but you have to use enough paint. If there's too much water in your brush, that paint is gonna be very transparent. And as you spread it, you're gonna keep trying to go over it again to fix that part. And remember, what do we do instead of fixing something? We leave it alone, we let it dry, we come back to it later. Don't fix something while it's wet. Okay, I'm gonna jump back over to chat and see if that was helpful for you guys. Let's see. Oh, Cindy's here with us. Welcome, Cindy. Man, you guys are on fire today. Sometimes I come back after a long rant and I'm like, oh, nobody said anything. So I like that you guys are being so active today. Gwen says she's been dabbing all the water off of her brush. Yeah, stop doing that. There's no reason to wet your brush if you're just gonna dry it off again. You forget to mush sometimes. Gotta mush. And it's hard to see from this camera angle, but are you holding the brush at tiptoe when you load it? No, I'm flattening it out. It's, flat. A good amount of pressure. That's how you get those bristles to open up. So really just, completely flat pressure to load it. Good, Atra. She says, I don't have too much of an issue and this is still helping me. Yes. Kelly says, I would have reloaded twice by now. So, practice that smushing thing. Really mush it in there and get a huge amount of paint on your brush. But by a huge amount of paint, I don't mean take your brush and go and get this big gob right there on the end, because you can't control where that gob goes. You're gonna put it on your canvas, that gob now lives right there, and your job from there on out is to spread it out from that area. By getting it all inside of the bristles, you have full control. This entire brush is loaded with paint, and when you come to the canvas and you're only using that much of the length, you're only using what's right here. When you need some more, you put a little extra pressure and now you've got some more. That's why I can get such coverage. It's just in the way that I use my brush, that kind of 1/2 foot pressure again. So like if you're kind of standing on the ball of your foot with your heel up off the ground, I'm using that pressure until I need more paint. Then a good press, continue working it. A good press, continue working it. Good. I'm glad that was super helpful, you guys. Good, good, good. And Gwen says, I've definitely been using my brush way too dry. Yeah, if ever you feel like you just don't, it's skipping too much, you're looking at it, you're like, there's so much paint on my brush, but it's skipping, then you probably need just a little bit of extra water. Okay, looks like we are ready to move on. So I'm gonna push play again. You guys remember, you can stop me at any time if you need to ask a question, if you need another demo, whatever.
Right here, let's keep building the highlights here. I'm gonna put a nice long streak of that white. There's still a good amount of paint, but no pressure.
See, now can you tell what it is that I'm doing there? See how very little my brush is bending? See, the paint on my brush is quite thin.
That you want.
And that's super light pressure to just break it up.
It's happening a little bit.
That doesn't look perfect by any means, but I'm not going to micromanage it and keep trying to come back and fix it and fix it and fix it.
As I did of the white a minute ago. And the same thing with super light pressure. I'm not putting a ton of pressure on this brush.
So you can tell my brush isn't even bending there.
Let's pull that line out just a little bit, just soften it. There we go. And again, see, I don't have a hard line here. I want it to almost be completely ambiguous as to when the tornado stops and the sky in the distance begins. I don't want a real hard line between the two. Grab a little bit more white. And let's kind of pop a little bright spot right in here.
Yeah, so see where that rubber band is. And I know that when I'm holding it, I can feel that rubber band. I know that I'm holding it in the right spot.
To get a bit of blending. Now I'm trying not to use matte medium with every single painting, because I know a lot of you don't have it.
Oh, thank you, Barb. Tell him I said thank you.
I do. If you were to pick up the tiniest point of that medium here,
Kelly says micromanaging gives me microaggression. I agree.
Do it without. See, I'm still just adding a little brighter spots. We're not going white though anywhere. Not yet. We will. But we're gonna build it just a little bit. Let's get just a little bit more white. I did pick up a little bit more of that black-brown mixture. So
yes, brush pressure is everything. Gwen said she did use the matte medium. Oh, I wanted to use matte medium on these clouds so bad. But every time I use matte medium, and it doesn't matter if I say it right at the beginning or not, every time I use matte medium, I get 1,000 questions. Do I have to use the medium? It doesn't matter if I just said yes or no. And, you know, even if I say, don't, you can't use matte gel. I still get people saying, can I use matte gel instead? So I'm trying to not use matte medium for everything right now.
At the bottom of that movement.
Yeah, Atra asked if I'm, she said fussing, but I'm assuming she meant dusting. Only the top edge of the clouds, for the most part, yeah. Every once in a while, I'll decide on the bottom that I want a smoother spot, and so I'll kind of dust out the bottom there. I'm not trying to, don't stick to rules, okay? So if I say I'm really only dusting out the top part, well, you also don't want all of these clouds that have everything looks the same. This hard edge on the bottom, the soft edge on the top. You know, every once in a while, break that up. Maybe dust it out on the side, dust it out on the bottom. Maybe leave a harder edge on the top here and there. But for the most part,
start bringing this down into our tornado a little. I'm still using the edge, kind of the corner, kind of just hitting the corner of it on there. That might still be just a little bit wet to work on. See, I kind of took it down to the canvas.
Sloan doesn't understand what matte medium is for, and Deb has a love-hate relationship with it. And apparently Kelly does as well.
A little bit of water.
All right, we'll do some matte medium demonstrations sometimes. Sometime.
Bit more white than before.
I think, I swear, I I really think that we overthink things sometimes. We think, oh, there's got to be more to it than that. And so
A bit of a longer one.
and so we struggle with things, you know. When matte medium, really, there's no difference between it and using water. However you would use water,
So don't
use
worry
matte
about
medium. I mean,
the tornado looks
that's all there is to it. You know, if you think, oh, my paint is too dry on my brush, I want to dip it in the water,
changes the
you can also just dip it in matte medium, you know.
how the colors kind of impact each other.
That's really all there is to it. If you want thin paint, lots of matte medium, tiny bit of paint.
So, you know, rather than just highlighting everything around the bottom edge, kind of like what I'm doing right this very second, which is fine in places, but also kind of play with it.
You don't have to bring my hoodie.
At an angle like
He
that,
is
you
a
see
great
what happens.
husband.
And to me, that kind of takes this cloud and it
Yeah, you
pulls
can
it
use matte
together
medium
so
with
that
water.
they're closer.
Sure.
But there's no reason to just highlight the bottom edge. You know, I kind of did the same thing right here. A little bit of that light color there.
You guys.
I pulled it up that way rather than, you know, along this edge here.
Yeah, you can absolutely use matte medium in place of water. You can use it
Don't worry about going
with
too
water.
hard.
Sometimes I use
Don't
both.
worry
Sometimes
about
I
it.
only use one or the other.
This is the same
Um,
thing like when we highlight
My
anything else, you
my
guys.
rule of thumb is if I want to thin my paint out to transparency, then I'm absolutely going to use the medium. Using water on its own will thin it out too much so that it, I know it sounds like sorcery, but I swear it won't stick to your canvas. You can let it dry for I don't care how long. If you come back to it with something else, you're going to smear it. In fact, I almost destroyed a painting that I had sold because I had seriously underbound the paint, thinned it out way too much, and let it dry for, I mean, I hadn't touched it for at least a year, and probably more than that. And then when I went to varnish it, the varnish just completely streaked all of that paint. So I promise you that that is a thing.
Dust of that.
It happens.
Maybe just a little dust here where it
Does it help to preserve the paint? No, because, you know, quality paint, Liquitex, Golden, those, they should be archival and light fast. They don't need anything else to preserve them.
all right, more white.
But it does help preserve the integrity of the binder if you're going to thin the paint out too much so that the pigment isn't loose and wipes off your canvas.
So just very controlled pressure.
What's the difference between matte medium and glazing medium? So matte medium has an aggregate in it,
Down there.
so it doesn't actually make the paint completely transparent.
Right there, no worries.
So like if you take matte medium and you pour it out and you let it dry in a little puddle, you'll notice it's kind of translucent. It's almost like a really kind of a transparent milky color. Glazing medium will dry crystal clear. It really is up to you what you prefer. I prefer matte medium. For one, the Liquitex glazing medium dries very, very fast, and I don't like that. Where matte medium, it dries just a little bit slower, and I'm not really worried about having this crystal clear color. So it just depends on what you're looking for. Chemistry rant.
We're going to this color as we move back. It's starting to really wear off with my brush.
See how I work on one little piece and then move to something
Start taking
else?
it down.
You know, because I'm not applying the paint super thick. By the time I come back to that spot again, it's dried enough that I'm not going to blend it all in. Yeah, the glazing medium is quite sticky. Matte medium, I feel like matte medium is so smooth, so smooth, particularly with heavy body paints. I really prefer using matte medium instead of water when I use heavy body paints. For one thing, the Liquitex Heavy Body, I feel like those paints dry a little bit faster than basics. And water doesn't necessarily seem to help that open time. but matte medium does. So yeah, when I paint with a heavy body, I prefer using matte medium instead of water. That's just my preference. It doesn't mean that if you're using heavy body, you have to use matte medium. It doesn't mean that at all.
Some of that darker color.
Oh, Kelly was afraid of this one. Don't be afraid. Uh-oh, are we freezing up?
Don't worry about going outside.
Can you guys still hear me?
See that? See how I went outside of my shape there?
It's freezing up on my end.
Tornado's not going to have
there
a
we
real
go. There.
hard, definite edge.
Are we back? Can you guys hear me, see me, whatever?
All kinds of
yeah, Cheryl says I like the golden glazing
covering up some of
because it extends the drying time. That's what I've heard. I've heard that on of the golden one. But that's why, you know, that's why we make a million different types of mediums, you guys. I know that it's super overwhelming. What's the difference between this one and this one? And it's that way because yes, each one is a little bit different, but what it boils down to is what you prefer, you know? Like I tell people all the time, no, you can't use matte gel in place of matte medium for glazing. But you know what? I guarantee there's someone out there who uses matte gel for glazing and absolutely loves it. That's not what it's made for. It's probably really hard to develop a technique to use that for glazing, but hey, I bet somebody does it, and that's what they prefer.
Working on top of wet paint. Went outside my line there. Perfectly fine with that.
Bye, Sloan. Thanks for coming. Yeah, the twist on the tornado can be a little bit, I don't know why. I had to stop and think about it a little bit too.
Let's pull a highlight coming from over here. You can kind of pull it that way a bit. Whatever you want.
Yeah, Barbara says I usually chalk in a shape I'm not sure I can do. Yeah, you can absolutely do that too.
Look nice and twisty. I'll pull another one there toward the edge.
So my very first version, I might have even painted over it. I don't think I even have it anymore. The very first version I did of this was like the whole like cyclone type clouds, you know, like the big wall of the seriously detailed clouds.
Sometimes when we're new.
Yeah, it was intense. And after spending about 45 minutes to an hour just on the cloud part, I was like, you know, let's take that down a little bit. So then, you know, we ended up with the more simpler version. I don't think I have it anymore. I'm pretty sure I painted over it. Maybe I have a photo on my phone.
Just be open to those kinds of things. Let's get some more dark.
Let me see if I can find a photo of it. I paint over things a lot.
And just break some of that up. Light pressure.
Oh, it's a really horrible photo, but I do have a photo of it. Let me see. It's not a very good photo. Let's see. And this was a practice canvas. There's a lot going on in here, but anyway, you can see. Let's see. Whoa. So that was my first tornado when I was like, yeah, we're going to do a tornado this week. So I got a little crazy with it and then was like, we should take that one down a bit. Anyway, I told you it was crazy.
Nice and dark right back here. No hard line, though. I don't want that hard.
That's right. I wasn't joking. That thing was a beast.
Maybe I'll come back in a little bit with a different brush to finish it up.
Thanks, you guys. Trust me, you wouldn't have enjoyed that video, though. You'd have been like, ugh. It's already an hour and we haven't even done the grass yet. We haven't even done the twister part yet, just the clouds.
And if anything got too light, or weird shapes.
We'll see. I mean, we've done clouds that detailed and that intricate many times, you guys. You know, if you want, you can take like the clouds that we did in the Stormy Seaside or whatever I called it, the big purple clouds.
On this brush.
You can take those exact same clouds that we did and do them in here instead. You know, that's why sometimes I show you different things. So we've got, you know, like the super intense things and the much easier things. And if you've done the super intense ones, you can feel free to take those techniques in and replace the super easy ones with them. You know, you're always free to do things like that.
So let me show you over here.
My highlights are very stark. How would I mute them? Pat, I would maybe take just a color that's just a little bit darker and maybe even just a hint of matte medium. Thin that color down and just lightly wipe over it. You don't have to cover all of the white, but just by kind of punching in a couple of those areas, just a tiny hint darker, it might be enough to make you not feel like they're too stark.
So I am gonna work a little bit looser and just see what I can do here. So I got a bit of a darker color.
Oh, I usually around this time tell you guys what we're gonna be painting.
Maybe using
next week too, don't I? So I don't think you guys are gonna like me very much. So this week, actually, we don't have painting. There's no painting this week, unfortunately. I'm really sorry. Excuse me, Vince and I are getting ready to go on our vacation, and that is next week. Well, we leave on Sunday. I think we leave on Sunday. So yeah, so we will have a video next week. So this week I will be putting together next week's video. So even though I'm on vacation next week, you're not having a video this week, but you will have one next week while I'm on vacation. So it's just, this is the first vacation I've taken in 8 years, and I'm not quite sure how to prepare for it. So yeah, my goal was to make sure that we didn't skip painting at all, but that was just, I was putting way too much stress on myself with that. So I knew I had to let one go either this week or next week, and I decided that it would be better to have one next week. So yeah, so no video this week, video for sure next week. Yeah, so we are going on vacation. I'm so excited, you guys. It's been so many years since I've been on vacation, and I mean, it's just a short one. We're just spending 2 nights, but yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I'm excited. Pick a favorite old one for you guys to do. All right, maybe I will. Where are we going? Hopefully somewhere warm. No, actually, I looked at the weather last night and it's like in the high 40s. Which I'm fine with. We are going to Estes Park, Colorado. So we're gonna go stay at the Stanley Hotel. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, we're staying in the room that Stephen King stayed in when he was inspired to write The Shining. So that's exciting. Being that I'm a horror fan nerd and love Stephen King, pretty excited about that. So, oh yeah, and you guys can fully plan on photos and all kinds of stuff while we're there. So anyway, let's go back to our video.
A little bit of extra water. I want this to seem quite billowy.
Kelly, please don't wish things like that on me.
I feel like my
I don't like
is
clowns.
a little bit too solid.
At all. Did we decide on April challenge? Yeah, the April challenge is posted in the
Sometimes
Facebook page.
Layers
It's pinned to the very top of the group.
a little bit more interesting. Pulling that color through there a bit more, and down into here even. See how I'm letting that really
See, guys,
into the sky.
all of you guys who are like, I don't like my sky.
How we do that.
I'm gonna tell you to just paint over it, because I just painted over mine. So you should know that there's nothing wrong with painting over something.
Nice long, narrow brush strokes right in there. Let's feather that.
Barb got scared by the night workers.
I think when I was working on,
I think it'll be funny because I know that a lot of times people come up to the door of room 217 to like take a photo, like a selfie, and act all scared. So we're kind of anticipating having people at the door on and off while we're there. So we're probably gonna mess with them and like make ghost sounds on the other side of the door.
And I really like that.
Because
So if you haven't started painting yet,
we're fun people like that.
maybe try it on a gessoed surface. And maybe, you know, if you're
Oh yeah, you have to scare them. If they're gonna stand on the other side of my door, I'm gonna scare them. Absolutely.
But don't get
Maybe I'll
that
try and get a
keep
video
going
of it
back
too.
and forth,
That'd be funny.
Light and dark. Let's get a little bit more.
The Jack Nicholson mask. Actually, there's a guy that they hire at the hotel who looks just like Jack Nicholson.
Really gonna make this
And the first time I saw him, I was like, oh,
shorter brush stroke
Jack
in
Nicholson
there.
is here. And then I got closer to him, like, it's not Jack Nicholson, but he
Right in
looks
there.
just like
The
him.
tornado's the most turbulent. Light brush pressure. Pull that into that previous color. Heavy pressure to lay that color down.
Do you guys want to skip the rest of the clouds? Are you pretty
So
comfortable
even though that background
with the
color
clouds?
is
Should we
dry,
skip a little bit, or are we good?
getting a
You want to
nice soft
stay?
transition between them.
I guess you have no idea
This
what
is
I was
looking much
just
better
asking
already.
because I like asked 5 different questions,
Much
expecting a yes or no answer.
Little brush strokes. See that those little waves, kind of laying paint down and then breaking it up.
Skip? All right. I got 2 skips.
Little blob of
Cindy
paint
said
there.
skip 2.
And break it up.
Hey, Cindy, where's Nelson? We haven't seen Nelson around
Now
for
I
a
get
while.
a bit of white put down here.
See, guys? Work, 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 work.
And
Keep changing those clouds.
I'm gonna go to these.
All right, there. We'll finish
short
up the
brush
twister.
strokes rather than the longer ones. Get a bit more texture.
Bye, Tan. I'm glad you got to hang out with us for a little while. He's napping. That Nelson.
Barely touching right there. I wanted to deposit
Well, tell him I
it.
asked about him. I haven't seen him for a while.
Bring just a hint of it over to this side. Just wherever you think it's going to be interesting. There's not a right and a wrong here. Depending on how your tornado is shaped, your highlights might look better in completely different areas than on mine. And you get to decide that.
So what else have you guys been working on lately?
Twisting it, I've got some lighter areas.
What
right there on
other
this edge.
projects
And it
or
comes around, now it's in the middle. now it's
painting
this back
or,
edge.
you know,
Maybe
whatever?
this
Tell me
edge.
what you've been up to.
So keep those
Cindy
little
took a nap
twists
before
in
the
mind.
live.
Little bit
That's
of
right.
pressure,
He
light,
does need to manage his naps better.
light pressure.
I'm very glad you were here, Kelly. Katrina's been playing with gouache. I just got a tube of gouache yesterday, just white, to use with watercolor, and it's working really well for what I wanted to use it for with watercolor. So hopefully that's something I can bring to you guys soon. Bye, Amanda. I'm glad you're able to make it.
Not too
Oh,
bad.
Audrey's
Back
back
to my
hurts.
dark color.
Paint pouring.
Same thing with the
A
corner.
fox.
I'm not really caring for this
Fighting with the
bit
blend on a
back here.
sunset. Afraid to paint. Don't be afraid. It's just paint, Kelly. There's no reason to be afraid.
There
You
we
know,
go.
what's the worst that could happen? You don't like it? Paint over it.
Kind of kick it back a little.
Doesn't
So
bite.
it's not
It doesn't put you in
completely
jail.
covered.
It doesn't steal your money. Just paint.
We'll just let it start right about there.
Working on a spring version of Harvest Garden. Awesome, Cheryl. Oh, maybe we should do that. I actually got asked for that quite a few times after we did Harvest Garden. I never did any other seasons,
And
but
like I said, you guys,
I guess it's always a possibility.
it gets away from you and you don't like what's happening, just let it dry and come back to it. Just like when we do trees or rocks. or
Oh, I think
anything
Mr.
else,
Jane is here.
you can make changes,
I think he just got
as
here.
many changes as you want. Okay, I don't think that's too bad. I'm gonna
Teach
take
you how
that
to
same
load a
dark
watercolor
color,
brush like I
corner,
did
and
today.
I'm just gonna kind of
Load watercolor brush is totally different. Or do you just mean like go into detail like I did today with it?
over it.
Ooh, Cindy did a surreal
Very
piece. I gotta find that. I love surrealism.
I'm gonna take it out here a little bit. Let's get just a little hint of white. And see how I've got the white on one side but not the other? I'm gonna use the corner of my brush, but I'm gonna angle it so the white is kind of facing me, and that way I don't deposit too much of it.
Let's move my big
Just
ol'
on
head
the
again. We'll put me
Of a lighter color, I can
up
slowly
here.
rotate the white toward the canvas. You know, if I go like that and it's not enough, I can rotate the white toward it. But I'd rather start with
Hello.
not enough white than end up with a big huge white blob right there. So again, see the white is kind of facing me. I'm not getting very much.
What is that?
Rotate it there.
Oh,
Maybe a little bit more.
thanks. I don't need it right now.
Let's just keep that same color on our brush. Just a little bit of water. Let's keep that same color about on our brush. And we're going to block in our
Yeah, we
house.
can-
Now, if
we
you're
can
more comfortable
definitely
doing
do,
this with a small brush or drawing the house on with
A little bit more in-depth stuff
perfectly fine.
when we
I'm just
do
gonna do it with
watercolor
my
again.
brush, so
Vince,
it's
everybody
like
is saying hi
this
to you.
is, and drag my brush
Hi, can you hear me?
straight down.
Yeah, they can hear you.
Hi.
Make the other
I've brought her
side,
hoodie.
make sure it's at the same angle, and drag my brush straight down. It's okay.
You can come over here and
Way.
pop your big old face in and say hi.
Down.
Not that big, is it?
It's kind of
inside
big,
the
yeah.
house.
Get in
This
here.
is really just the house blocked in.
Look at that beard, man. He looks
Got a little piece of roof
He
there.
looks like a-
It's more paint.
like Santa Claus. Sorry.
And I think we're gonna have a little tree.
Now he's mad
Maybe
at
one
me.
behind it too. So the
When is
black
Vince
brown,
painting
some
again?
blue, some yellow,
And Kelly says you get hero
nice
points.
Dark.
He always
green.
gets hero points. But Eileen said, when are you painting again?
Little
Soon.
Extra water. There.
Really?
Soon.
When?
Still, just
I don't
the
know, you
corner
said
of my brush. I'm gonna start with
2
one here
weeks.
that's kind of behind the house.
I did not say 2 weeks. You're just
Dotting
making stuff
lines,
up now.
scratching on. Don't
I'll
worry,
paint
go
again in
over
4
top of your
weeks.
house.
Why in 4
All
weeks?
the way off the edge of the canvas.
That sounds good to me.
Bring it over
He's
here.
making things
All the
up.
trees growing around the house.
Deb said that you're
Kinda
awesome.
Tilt it back.
And Pat and Barb said, nice
It's
beard.
kind of blowing in the wind.
And Debbie
See that one
said,
right here.
that's your Sean Connery look.
Comes up.
I like that better than Santa.
He likes that better than Santa.
And it kind of blows back.
I'm actually going to take my painting stuff with me when we go on
Pop a couple
vacation.
highlights on it a little
I was hoping to
bit.
paint a bit while we're there because Estes Park is so
A
beautiful.
little bit of a
And I asked
blend.
Vince if he would paint with me, and he said no.
I was gonna write.
No, he didn't flat out say no. He said maybe. Oh, yeah. And he says he's going to
A
write.
little bit of a heavier application
We'll see.
of the paint there.
What?
That's better for me.
Eileen said she saw last night's pizza in your beard.
One more.
I'm sure it's
just a
there.
little bit brighter.
Why what, Kelly?
That's going to create a nice color contrast where the rest of the painting is really quite drab. It's a nice bright set of blowing trees. Might catch our attention a little bit. Okay,
Did
moving on
anybody
to
do
number 8,
completely
right?
different
Ooh,
things
I
on the
love
ground
that.
here with the trees? I mean, I know I saw lots of different variations of the composition and
And
stuff, but as far as
some of my dark
colors,
colors.
it seems like I mostly saw pretty close to the same colors.
And let's start
So did
adding
anybody
a
use
few
different
little details
colors
to our house.
or,
It's gonna come from
you know,
under the
totally
paint.
different techniques? Tell me about your
And
experience
same
with the
thing,
ground
that
here.
same angle, drag it straight down. Just let it kind of fuzz out wherever it's going to.
Your house is always lopsided? You know, I think
Not looking
that's really just something that will come with practice.
edges right
You know,
Maybe I'll make this.
and I'm sure that my house is probably
Let's
lopsided
do it.
too. But one of the ways that you can kind of hide
That'll
that
be fun.
is always have something around it. You know, if you're worried that it looks lopsided, make sure that you have a tree that kind of covers just one of the corners. Or like I do here, I've got some little grasses that kind of come up the bottom. You know, if your house is just kind of standing out on its own, then there's a lot of opportunity and room for it to look crooked. Even if it's not, it might look crooked in relation to the elements around it. But, you know, just by having a tree or something that kind of breaks the shape a little bit, that will go a long way to hiding even a house that is crooked. Just hide it a little bit. But also, like this house here, it's a little old farmhouse or a shed or something in the middle of a field in an area with massive tornadoes. Chances are it's going to be crooked anyway. So I don't think that that really matters. You know, just like the fence posts. I made the fence posts intentionally at crazy angles. And you can do that with a house too. There's nothing wrong with that. Diane used clear gesso and tinted it green. So Diane, I have never used clear gesso before. I've heard of it, but I would like to know your experience with clear gesso. Does it have much tooth to it, or is it pretty smooth? Because sometimes I'll use matte medium instead of gesso.
A ton of it on my brush.
Good, good, good. Debbie said she's finally learning the looser technique with the trees and bushes and loves it. And Nelson joined us. Welcome, Nelson. We were just talking about you.
On the edge here, just to say that's where the
all of the things about you.
Is dark. A little bit of black, and we'll add a door. So I'm going to come in like this, touch where the door is going to be, and then lightly drag it to one side or the other.
Wow, Diane said it's wonderful. It has the same consistency, but you can control the color, and it has a great tooth. That's awesome. What brand did you use, Diane? Because I've really been interested in using a clear gesso from time to time. So for those of you who have never used it before and wonder why you would want a clear gesso, sometimes depending on what you're painting, you may paint something and not want to lose that, but the next layer you paint on top of it, you want to protect that first layer, but also have a little extra tooth. Like if you want to scrub fog over top of something and you feel like you need a little extra tooth, then you would use like clear gesso.
A little bit of blue, a little bit of this green color. Much darker than what's already on the trees.
Nah, Nelson, there wasn't that much to talk about. Just your napping habits. They're very inconvenient for me.
Now I'm going to go to my fan brush, and I know that not everybody is a fan of the fan brush. See what I did there? So you can use whatever you like for doing grasses. Sometimes I like the fan brush, sometimes not. Today felt like a fan brush.
Okay, I thought it was probably the Liquitex brand.
In there, and that's
I don't know why I haven't picked it up before. I need to try some.
A dark green. The best way to mix paint with your fan brush, because I know going like this, sometimes you just get stripes. Kind of take it and squidge it back and forth like that. Flip it over, squidge it back and forth again. That really helps to load the paint up in your brush, but also mix the colors together. A little speck of water. So I have quite a bit of paint loaded up in here, and I'm going to start kind of in the distance, but I'm not going to put a ton of pressure back here in the distance. See how I'm really just kind of touching with the very front of the brush.
Kelly's hooked on the glass bead medium. Yeah, but stuff's really fun. I went through a phase where I used it on like all of the things. But right now, one of my favorite for a lot of my my personal paintings that I do, I really like a textured surface with a good amount of tooth on it. And so one thing I've been doing is mixing modeling paste with gesso. So modeling paste has a lot of marble dust in it, so it's very dry. It's got a nice, very soft, toothy, I know that sounds weird, soft tooth, but
As we
yeah,
start
it's
to
almost
get
like
forward, we're gonna put a
sandstone
little
but
extra pressure on
smoother.
the brush.
And so I'll mix that with gesso
I'm
and then
crossing
just
over
kind
the
of
tornado.
loosely apply it
Down here in
over
the
a
front,
canvas with a palette
slowly
knife
putting about full
and
pressure
paint on it.
on the
And
brush.
I really, really like that surface. So that's another one for you to try out.
Not trying to cover all of that underpainting. It may still show a little bit, and that's okay. Smaller shapes, smaller dabs as we move back here. Let's pop a little bit of brightness into that. A little extra water.
Weird, Nelson. No, I don't think you're doing anything wrong. I think it's the brand of gesso you're using.
More with that
So
heavy
Nelson
pressure.
says when I use gesso, it makes the canvas feel slippery. I don't get the toothiness of it. I feel like I'm painting on wax paper. That sounds awful.
Lighter pressure toward the back.
Nelson, what brand is that? Is it the Artist Loft gesso? Because
Starting to get just a very
I can
slight,
kind of see that.
a very subtle
The
grass.
gesso I use is the Liquitex. Hey Vince, can you hand me that jug right there
Brighter.
under my
Mixed
easel?
in the rest of that yellow.
I'll show you which one I use. Yeah, it should feel like Gwen said, a little bit chalky.
Really handle thing.
Vince wants to hand model it.
From our house and
But is it this one,
pressure.
Nelson?
Just
The
gonna brighten up the ground.
here, hang on, let me.
Bring it up. Just
Thank you,
a little
Vince.
bit.
That was very delicate, your hand modeling. Let's go to here. So I have the the Liquitex Basics gesso, and this one, it's seriously like very, very dry and very, very toothy. It should not feel like, yeah, you can put it away if you like. Thank you. It should not feel like wax paper. Is that the exact same one that you're using, Nelson? If it is, then yes, but not that big, but it's that same, it's the Liquitex Basics. I'm almost wondering if it's either a bad batch or maybe that's not what was supposed to be in the bottle. There's something else in there. Because I've used a few other brands of gesso, and I've not very many, a couple, but that is the most dry, most toothy gesso I have used. It's, so yeah, yours, no. He says maybe I'm putting on too much. Yeah, Eileen said shake it. You might want to shake it. It could possibly be separating. I don't think you can put on too much. When I put it on my canvas, I typically have my canvas flat. I hold that jug upside down and go and let big gobs of it onto the canvas. I use a lot of gesso, like I said, particularly in my personal paintings, because I like a lot of texture. And the thicker it is, the more tooth there is to it. Yeah, I think there's something wrong with it. Yeah, I think that your gesso is either bad, it needs to be shaken, it could be old. You might want to get a new one. And who was it? Was it Atra that said, I don't know, somebody said that they have the Liquitex Professional gesso and they like it even better than the Basics one. So maybe try that. But yeah, with that Basics gesso, I've never experienced that. Okay, let's get back to it. Everybody's favorite part here with the fan brush. I know how you guys all love the fan brush.
Brush a little and then lighten the pressure. Let's let it kind of fade out.
Yeah, Atra's the one who said try the professional version.
See, it's that little bounce again.
Kelly, is it the same kind?
And just kind of bouncing.
It is very, very thick. When I turn it upside down, it doesn't like pour out so much as like I have to like keep hitting the jar and shaking it, and then it just kind of in a big blob goes.
Just kind of do some little.
So it doesn't actually like pour out. I never sand my canvas either, Eileen. That's up to you if you want to sand or not. When I use gesso, it's because I want a good tooth. And if you sand it, you make it very smooth and kind of lose some of that. So it just depends on what you prefer.
And I'm going brighter.
Oh, Debbie is a fan of the fan brush. Nice.
A few bright grasses here in the front. Very light pressure. See that? Very light.
Yeah, I think that's what it sounds like to me, Cindy. Nelson, if that's a newer bottle, if you haven't had it for very long, I would immediately return it. Eileen, if Jane doesn't sand, I don't sand then. Okay, so let me tell you why I actually don't sand. Because I'm lazy.
Nice and bright, right in front of our house.
And now I just like how gesso is without being sanded. I'm sure that if I actually were to sand my gesso, I'd be like, oh, this is miles better. And then I would always sand it, but I don't have time or energy for that kind of junk, so I don't sand it. Asha says I used the fan brush in the same fashion on my current painting and it turned out great. I just didn't like the time that it took. You impatient little thing. Oh, Kelly's got the Master Touch gesso. Yeah, they might be a little bit thicker. All of the brands are, you know, they all have different properties. Some are going to be a little bit waxier and smoother. Some are going to be super, super dry. Some will be in between. Some may be really thin and runny, and some may be really, really thick. And again,
really have just
there's so many different versions of things because it boils down to what you prefer. So that's why it's really hard when people are like, well, what's better? This or this? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you like?
All right.
You know, the one that gives you the result you like is the one that's better for you.
Bright again, and just get some black brown.
We should do a big fan brush demo one day, huh?
Kind of general.
Fan brush all of the things.
And start right here, maybe. Just kind of tap in a little shape, and they don't have to be straight.
Again, with the fan brush, just like we were talking about matte medium earlier, where I said that I think sometimes people,
just make them a little bit smaller.
I think people complicate things more than they need to be. We assume that because this brush looks so much different than any other brush, that there must be something magic. There must be some really fancy way to use it, and so we complicate it, you know. And I mean, certainly you can't do everything with this brush, but it's still not a complicated tool, you know. I don't use a fan brush a lot because, you know, you can do things with this brush, excuse me, that you can do with other brushes, but they're all going to look different, right? Each brush is going to give you a little bit of a different look, and typically I prefer the look that other brushes will give me, so that's why I don't use this a lot. But it's not because it's hard to use or, you know, there's nothing magic to a fan brush, I promise. And we will go into more depth in fan brushes at some point.
A little hint of white. And we can come back here and just kind of touch. Let's get a little bit more white than that. Just kind of touch.
Yeah, Debbie said a lighter touch with a fan brush is the trick, for sure. You don't need,
see, it's not,
you know, the more you work a fan brush, the more you're going to dislike it.
It doesn't stick where it doesn't stick.
Is loading it different? No.
I'm going to add a little bit of brown.
And yeah, like Pat said, paint, it typically needs to be a little bit thinner for a fan brush.
Go across the top here. Just kind of on the top of this post, maybe just a hint of it right there.
It's not magic, Nelson, it's sorcery. There's a difference. My only well, and I showed you here in this video, I'll show you again super quick. The only difference, Kelly asked about, whoops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this. Kelly asked about loading a fan brush if it's the same. And I said yes, but really it is a tiny bit different. So let's just do that real quick because I have a little leftover paint here. So somebody else mentioned, I think it was Pat, that you do want to use your paint a little bit thinner, a little bit more water when you use a fan brush. And that's definitely true. So I'm gonna wet it in my jar. Nice and wet. And then I'm just gonna kind of lightly just wipe one side. Excuse me. Now to load the fan brush, I'm really gonna do a very similar thing. So you just kind of grab the paint and pull it out here. But if you just keep doing that, really you just start getting stripes. See the stripes with the black and the white? So flip it over and do that, but then we still have stripes. So what I'll do is after a couple of times, and I kind of go like that. So you kind of squidge it in there, flip it over, squidge it in there again. You can pull more paint in. I have very much paint in there. Just kind of get those mixed. And so that mixes the color and it forces it into the bristles. So that's really the only trick is, see I've got the full pressure and then it's just kind of a wiggle back and forth. And that's a good way to load your fan brush. Sometimes I need like 5 arms, I swear. Maybe 6, that would be awesome. I'm trying to do the keypad with my, what is happening to me? I don't know what I'm doing, thank you. Yeah, my job requires me to be an octopus sometimes. And I just don't fit that requirement.
And I think I'm pretty happy.
And yes, I was obsessively washing my brush because I never, ever, I do not ever, oh, hang on, we're done. Leave my brush sitting in the water, period. The very second I'm done with the brush, I clean it, dry it, reshape it, lay it flat to dry. So we just had a couple of comments in the group about, you know, people with issues with their brushes, and that's a really important thing. You cannot, there's people who say, well, I never leave my brush sitting in the water. But what they mean is when they're done painting, they take the brushes out. But while they're painting, the brush is sitting in the water. Never do that, you know? So let's see. I'm really passionate about this. So here's my water jar. And there's nothing sitting in it. You will never, pay attention if you can see my water jar in my video, you will never see that. Not even for a minute. So as soon as I'm done with the brush, I clean it, dry it, shape it on my paper towel, and leave it laying perfectly flat to dry all the way. Don't touch them until they're perfectly dry. Yeah, so hopefully there's some rant emojis because that's my rant for the day. Be nice to your brushes, guys. Be so nice to your brushes. Smoosh, salt, and squidge. You're right, Kelly. Today's episode is brought to you by the letter S. Yes, Cindy, you spelled squidge correctly. S-Q-U-I-D-G-E. The D-G is the important part. All right, so what do we have? Nelson, I'll never forget the great single messed up bristle disaster of 2017. I must have missed that one, but it sounds horrible. Yeah, Debbie, no. Guys, never leave your brushes sitting in the water. It makes me cringe so bad. You know, thankfully I haven't had very many problems with my brushes. I haven't had very many people saying, you know, that they have issues. The main thing is I've had, seriously, maybe two or three in the, you know, out of the thousands of brushes that I've sold, people saying, well, my brush handle's split. And, you know, they say, well, I don't leave them sitting in the water and I lay them flat to dry, just like you said. But then when I'm talking to them, I find out they do leave them sitting in the water while they're painting. So that's still sitting in the water. So especially the smaller the brush is, so like This brush and the cloud brushes and the 1-inch, you might be able to leave this sitting in the water for a day or two even, and it will be fine. But the smaller the brush gets, like this tiny little bit of wood, it's still gonna expand, and it's gonna show damage faster than a large brush. So it's super important that you just don't leave them. You should never leave it sitting in the water for even 5 minutes. Any word on my new brushes? Not yet. It's gonna take, it'll take a couple of months. Oh, Dina, did you put comments in before that I wasn't seeing? I don't know why that happens sometimes, but I'm really sorry. Don't try to eat potato salad with your fan brush. As a general rule, I just avoid potato salad. Full stop. Cheryl, get those brushes out of the water. I don't care if they're cheap brushes. Get them out of there. Oh, Dina, I'm really sorry. I don't know, when I set up, because I have a little bit of control over what happens with the chat. Like, I can tell it to block potentially inappropriate comments, all of those things, but I try and turn all of that off for these private chats so that things like that don't happen. I don't know why they still happen. But yeah, if ever that's happening, please keep trying. And you probably were, and I feel really bad. I swear I wasn't ignoring you. I swear. Okay. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about today while you have me here? I'll give you a couple of minutes, and then if nobody does, we'll wrap up. Remember that next week we actually won't have a video. And because I'm getting ready to go on vacation. Yay! I'm so excited. I will have some videos, I don't know about videos. I'll have photos at least for you when we get back, and we will have a video the Tuesday that I am on vacation. There will be a video that day. So, oh, thank you, Eileen. I love and appreciate all of you too. You guys make me very happy. This is by far my favorite day of the entire week is Sunday. I love coming here and hanging out with you guys. So I hope that you will all continue to come. Even if you don't get anything out of the viewing parties, I hope you'll just come to chat with me because I really enjoy it. So, all right, guys. Well, it was awesome talking to you today. So I will talk to you not this weekend. It'll be 2 weeks, but we'll do it again. So have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.